NAU right now in this 8-year run has been one of the most successful programs in NCAA history in any sport. So what made this special was, it wasn't so much beating them by 22 points, it was beating them at all. 1 point would have been as good as 30 to me. Because in order to win this title, we had to beat one of the historically great programs with a Hall of Fame coach. I think just going out and knowing we beat one of the best programs in history was pretty exciting.
Coach, how does it feel to be a national champion?
Feels really great. Really excited for the men and women of this team. Especially Alex Mayer, a guy who's been here 5 years. He came here 5 years ago with the dream of winning an NCAA title and for our program to get back to the championship level. And it's been a long, hard, sometimes frustrating journey. But he was the first guy I found when I got back to the finish area and kind of grabbed him, gave him a big hug, and he was pretty excited. So that was a great moment.
Where did he place overall?
He was 15th overall. He was our 5th man. And, you know, he was 5th last year and our number 1 man, but he started getting a little ill on about Thursday, a little worse Friday, and tried to hide it from me. And Saturday, you know, he went and ran, and he probably wasn't his best, but just a tough kid, and hung in there and did a great job for us. And last night we got back and we got out of the bus and I heard him just coughing. I said, "Wow, you timed that right." He said, "Well, I've been feeling it for a couple of days, but I didn't want to say anything."
10 guys could only run 7. How hard was it to decide which 7 guys on your team were going to go run on Saturday?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I had 4 guys I knew that were going to run. I had one of those 10 I knew was not going to run. So I had 5 guys for 3 spots. And each one of those 5 guys at some point during the year had given me indication that they could be a top 30 guy. And we've kind of figured if we get 5 in the top 30, we'll win. And also, each one of those guys had done something that made me think, ooh, I don't know if they can be in the top 200 this year. Something's not right. So we went back and forth as a coaching staff probably 50 times on what the order would be, and back and forth for the last couple weeks. And even up until 30 minutes before the gun went off, we were still debating. So probably a little stressful for the team and for us, but in the end, it looks like we got the right 7 selected.
What are some of the criteria that you look for when deciding who to put out there to run?
At that time of the year, I'm really looking, obviously we look at performances over the year, who's been better most recently, who's kind of got, we say, momentum, who's been dependable. We also want on our back end, our 6th or 7th guy, we're looking for people who has the highest upside. They might only be a 10% chance, but if they hit it, they're really good. We go throw one kind of person like that in there. So we're looking at all those things, and then we get the week of, and we're on site, we're looking at body language and things they say, and just kind of evaluating where we think they are kind of emotionally and psychologically, because that's a huge part of being successful.
What about on the women's side? They finished 3rd, podiumed for the 2nd year in a row. How hard was it to decide who was going to go run for the women?
Women, it was much more clear. Our depth isn't quite there, so it came down to, we ran what was on paper our top 7 for most of the year. There was some debate with maybe, we ran a senior as our 7th runner, and maybe we thought we could put a freshman in there instead, someone who might get some experience to help us more next year. But that woman, Savannah Auerbach, ran incredibly well, so I'm glad we picked her. She did a fantastic job, had probably the best performance of her career. And the women getting 3rd was big for us. I think we lost 4 of our top 6 from last year, and then 3 women we thought were in our top 6 this year kind of didn't make it, injuries or illnesses or whatever. So it was a constant kind of reshuffling of the deck, and for that group of women to go out and get in 3rd was amazing.
You said the depth in the women isn't quite as deep as it has been in past years.
Yeah.
However, Taylor Rowe, one of your stars, did not have her best race.
Yeah.
Yet you still placed 3rd. So what does that say about the future of the women's side of the cross country team?
I think that the attitude and the expectation and what the women think of as a success is risen. And so I think we'll continue to strive for that championship. You know, we didn't really talk much about winning the championship, and then we're closer than we've ever been. You know, I think we were 20-some points, 25, 30 points off the win. And you look back, and Taylor was maybe 10, 15 places worse than we would have anticipated, and missing a couple kids, and think, man, that was there. And I think the women have talked about that since we left, and I think they've got in the back of their mind that, it's time to start chasing titles and hopefully bring one back for the women's team.
Something a little bit more special about the win on the men's side this year is last year you lost in a tiebreak to Northern Arizona.
Yeah.
This year you beat them by 22 points. How does that make this victory just a little more special?
Well, NAU right now in this 8-year run has been one of the most successful programs in NCAA history in any sport. And to be first or second 8 years in a row with 6 titles, there's not many programs in any sport in the NCAA that have done that. So what made this special was it wasn't so much beating them by 22 points, it was beating them at all. 1 point would have been as good as 30 to me, because in order to win this title, we had to beat one of the historically great programs with a Hall of Fame coach, a guy who's going to be remembered for a long time for what he did at NAU as a cross-country coach. He's younger than I am, so he's still got more titles to win probably. But I think just going out and knowing we beat one of the best programs in history was pretty exciting.
Oklahoma State putting on an absolute clinic today. They tied last year, they went back, they reloaded. They said, we're not gonna make that same mistake again and let this come down to a rule book. We are the national champions at just 52 points.
At what point during the season did you start to realize, hey, we might have a championship caliber team here?
Very early. I mean, once we got into the season, started doing some workouts, I knew what I had in Alex Mayer and Ryan Shoppy and Will Muirhead and Victor Shisama, some of the guys who'd been here. And I knew that those guys were all American level athletes. And then you threw in the new guys and they started right off the bat running with that core group of returners. That, wow, we've got some depth. At that point, we made a decision to redshirt one of our top guys, Ryan Shoppy, and kind of keep him around for a couple extra years. So, he was one of the guys at the meet this weekend. I almost pulled the redshirt off and stuck him in there and burnt his eligibility for that one race, but I'm glad I didn't because we got the win and now we have him for 2 more years.
How close were you to actually pulling that red shirt?
Oh, it was 50.1 to 49.9. So it was close, and really it came down to I was standing there and I kind of said, okay, that's it. I'm gonna pull him and put him back in the lineup, and then I realized, oh, it's too late. The entry's officially closed basically a minute ago. So it's done. So decision made.
At what point do you tell your athletes, hey, they're running? Like, how far in advance do they find out they're in?
Our top 4 knew for the last 2 weeks. They knew they were running, and then I think about 36 hours before race time, I had a meeting and said, hey, this is what I'm probably going to do. I said, but you know me, this will probably change in my own head 50 times between now and race time, and you might hear of 1 or 2 changes between now and then, because I'm not going to tell you everything, because it'll drive you as crazy as I drive myself. But the guys that ran, I thought they were running for about 36 hours.
How hard is it for an athlete to mentally prepare with news like that? Hey, you're probably going to run.
Yeah.
You might not run.
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
If you ask them, it's very difficult. I don't think they like that. My thought is that if I send 8 guys out there to warm up and I have 7 who I think are running, and one of them comes back and says, oh, my stomach's upset, I'm not feeling good, and then I have to go to someone and say, hey, you were the backup, but now you're in, I think that's a different feeling. But if I say, hey, these are the 7 guys that are running, no one knows who was the guy that was going to be left out. Everybody assumes I was going to run, and they kind of, I think maybe gives them a little more confidence to know the coaches. So I'm kind of protecting against something like that. It's only happened once in my career where someone came back from the warm-up and was sick and couldn't go, but I'm still in a little bit of PTSD from that moment, so.
It almost happened this year with Alex.
Yes, it did, yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
First time out in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah.
How was the course?
It was amazing. It was a great course, a beautiful setting. I probably haven't seen a more beautiful setting for a cross-country meet than that one, out in kind of the mountains, on a farm, up on a hill, and it's just beautiful rolling hills and forests as far as you can see in every direction. So that's amazing. I think the course was a fair course. It was challenging. It's not like ours. I think our course, with the footing on our course, is better than any course I've ever seen. I think that's the most impressive part of our course here in Stillwater. And certainly no one, including Panorama Farms, matches that. But in every other aspect, it was a top-notch facility.
In other sports, coaches create game plans, they scheme. We've talked a little about your decision-making and which 7 people we're going to race. What are the other elements of coaching a sport that just involves running?
Well, a lot of it's how you approach the race. And I tend to be very conservative. I feel like the most efficient way to run is with a very even, consistent pace. Most collegiate races don't run that way. Everybody goes out really, really hard. They kind of settle into a rhythm and kind of fade a little bit until the very end when they kind of pick it up again. And so traditionally, we've been kind of back in the standings through the first half of the race and then come on late. And last year, I think we were 200 points behind NAU about halfway or somewhere around that range, and then caught them in a tie by the end. And so that's one way to run it. NAU is much different. They're very aggressive. They go to the front. They try to make you uncomfortable, stress you out a little bit, put you under pressure. And that has worked very well for them. So we knew going into this race that was probably going to be the style of race. So all year we've been talking about it, preparing for it. We ran the Big 12 championships very aggressively, trying to get ourselves ready for that style race. And sure enough, that's the way the race went out, and we kind of responded and ran much more aggressively than we normally would.
And look at the way Oklahoma State has moved up through the last few K. They're down to 43 points. We said beforehand, look, this is a team that might have 4 guys with top 10 possibilities. And right now their 5th guy is in 16th place. So they are all there, and they're working together to move up in the field.
The other thing about cross country that's very different from sports played on a field is the course is 3.1 miles long, 5K. How do you coach your athletes when you're not directly with them or on a sideline able to talk to them constantly?
Well, different courses, you have better or worse opportunities to communicate with your athletes. And out there at Panorama Farms, I think there were 7,000 people there, and most of the course was lined with screaming fans, parents, coaches, teammates. And so communication was very difficult. And I told the guys ahead of time, hey, in this one, you're kind of going to be running blind. And then the timing system got overloaded, went down, so we couldn't see. Normally we get results every 3 minutes. We know what the standings are and where we are. We couldn't see those, so I was calling back to my wife, who was watching it online. She was telling me what the standings were, and I was trying to communicate that to my team. So I found a spot way back on the course where I could hear them and they could hear me, and we could communicate a little bit, but it meant that I only saw them 2 or 3 times during the entire race. So it was kind of a trade-off in the number of opportunities to see them in order to be able to communicate with them when I did see them. And so early in the race, we just didn't have a lot to say, but later when we started to take the lead, my messaging to them was, hey, we've got a big lead, take no more risks. Like I said, we tend to move up as the race goes on through the field. And at that point I said, hey, don't press, don't try to move up anymore, just maintain where you are. The danger with trying to move up is that you might overshoot and then you kind of crater and things go badly. So from about 7K on, the messaging from us, whenever they could hear us, was just stay where you are, don't press, we're in control, and let's keep it that way.
But right now, it is all Oklahoma State, and they've got individual title hopes and team title on the line right now.
How many coaches do you have throughout the course helping you communicate?
Well, we had 12 people there, 5 of them coaches, but also some support staff and some trainers were out there, and so we had a lot of people out there communicating, but 5 coaches.
Are there any races where you've not run along with, but you run from point to point to point to communicate?
Oh yeah, that's the way it is. And I think that the men race 10K, and I probably get 2 or 3 miles worth of running during their race normally. They're running 6.2 miles, but we're running, as a coach, you run 2 or 3, trying to get from point to point to see them. Like I said, this course, there wasn't much point, because if you ran to where you could, kind of run back and forth across the course and see them at different points, there was 7,000 people there with you, and you were just another voice in the crowd. They couldn't pick it out. So I stayed at an area at the very end of the course, kind of at the end of a big long loop where they would come by there on the men, I think I saw them 4 times, the women twice. And so I just said, well, it's better to have an opportunity to communicate where they can hear me than to have a lot of opportunities to see them, but they can't get any information from me.
You're able to run the 2 or so miles of the course because you were a track athlete yourself. You ran for Michigan State.
Yeah.
What events did you compete in there?
Early in my career, I was mostly middle distance, 1,500 meters, 800 meters the mile. Later in my career, I kind of moved to longer events, 5,000 and 10,000, which were probably my better events. I just resisted going to those events because like you, I just thought, oh, I don't run 10,000 on the track. So I resisted my coach's advice and said, I think I'm more of a middle distance runner. But by the end, I had much more success in the longer distance races and probably should have done it the whole time.
You had more success. What were your favorite races to run?
Well, I think like a lot of runners, you start to like where you find success. And so I only ran one 10,000 meter race in college. It was the Big Ten Championships my senior year, and I won that race and won the Big Ten title. And so for me, I thought, man, that was a fun race. So I have fond memories of it, but I only ran one of my career. So maybe if I had I think a bad 10K experience can sour you for a long time. So I think most of my career, I liked the 1,500 mile.
What was your least favorite?
The 5,000. It's right in the middle. It's hard. It's fast. It's uncomfortable. A lot of lactic acid. Yeah, it's a tough race to run.
When did you decide that you wanted to get into a career in coaching?
I kind of Forrest Gumped it. I just didn't know that's what I wanted to do. I finished undergrad and couldn't figure out life, so I went to grad school and realized halfway through that was also not what I wanted to do. And got the opportunity in the last year of my PhD to volunteer with the track and field teams at University of Washington. So I did that, and then while I was debating, do I go to med school, do I go to law school, what's next? An opportunity came up to coach. I thought, I'll go do that for 1 year. I've been in school for 23 years, give myself some time to calm down and think about what I really want to do, and this will be something fun. And that was in 1998, and here I am, 25 years later, 26 years later, still coaching.
How did you end up at Oklahoma State?
I originally was at Texas Tech, and obviously in the same conference with Oklahoma State. And Dick Weiss was the head coach here. Was a guy who had been around for a long time, had a lot of success. And as a young coach, I kind of gravitated towards him. If we had a track meet, we're sitting in the stands, I'd go sit with him. If we were at a cross country meet before the race, I'd go sit and chat with him. And so we kind of developed a relationship, and I had some success at Texas Tech. And at some point he called and basically said, hey, is there any chance you'd ever be interested in coming up here and working for me? And so kind of one thing led to another, and here I came.
You've worked your way up to be the director of track and field and cross country here at Oklahoma State. What are the differences in coaching cross country, indoor, and outdoor track?
Cross country is I love cross country because the team aspect of it, you guys get really focused on doing well for the team. For example, Taylor Rowe this weekend was not having a good day. And if that's an individual race, she probably drops out. She was at the point where she said, hey, I just didn't feel it, I was horrible. But because her team's relying on her, she knows we've got a chance to do something significant. She stays in there, she fights. Maybe she feels almost, I don't want to say embarrassed, but feels like for her, she expects a lot more, and here's a showing that's not her best. But because of the team, she stays in there and fights. I love that feeling of camaraderie and doing it for your teammates and sacrificing, what might seem to her be not a great race in order to help the team. So I love that aspect of cross country. We're also all training for the same event on the same day in the same distance. Track and field is a three-ring circus. There's things going on, all during the year, all different events, from the throws to the jumps to the sprints to the distance races. There's all kinds of things going on. And athletes are preparing for championships in February, in June. Some go on in the summer and try to run Olympic Games. So it's just a much more chaotic coaching experience, but that also keeps you very busy. And I like the puzzle pieces of trying to fit everything together. So that part of it's fun for me too.
Again, I realize indoor track is very different from cross country. However, how can you carry this momentum of a national championship into the indoor season?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of these athletes, I think it's physically exhausting, but it's really emotionally exhausting to go after something like this, be talking about it for a year, get there, get hyped up, win their race, kind of have the letdown from it, travel back. And now I think there's guys that were pretty excited to get going on the indoor track season who are now probably thinking, I think I need a little time. We've got a meet on the schedule in 2 weeks at Boston, and we had 8 or 9 guys that were probably going to go, and that will probably shrink to 4 or 5 here pretty quickly.
You've been with this program for over 20 years.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
When I came to Oklahoma State, it wasn't a long-term plan. It was just kind of, Coach Weiss wanted some help. I thought that'd be a nice change. It's a very successful distance program. That's kind of what I do. And I thought I would be here a couple of years and somehow find myself back to the West Coast where I'm from. But somewhere along the line, it just became home. And this university, this program became kind of my identity, so tied to it. And I feel like I just couldn't, I don't know if I could do anyplace else what I do here. And I don't know if I'd feel the same way about it. I think I've got some ownership and some real pride in the way this program's grown and developed. And it's like my own baby. I can't leave it. And so I love this athletic department, how successful it is. I think we are probably one of, dollar for dollar, the best athletic departments in the country. And I think it's telling that so many of our head coaches have been here so long, and that very few of them leave because they want to leave or there's another job out there. Guys retire, or sometimes they don't have a choice, they have to go, but very rarely do people pick up and leave for another job from this university. And I think there's a reason for that. It's just a great place to be.
Whenever it comes for your time to retire, which is hopefully many years from now,
Yeah.
What do you hope your legacy is with this program?
I just hope that that whatever we do here continues. I hope whoever comes next, and I've got some ideas for that. I hope whoever comes next kind of continues the way we've gone and honors the tradition. In track and field, there's all these events. You have a team of 60 men, but you've got 12 scholarships. So you really kind of have to pick what your identity is going to be. You can't be everything. And we've kind of chosen the middle distance running as the backbone of our program and then grown out from there. I hope whoever comes next can kind of continue that tradition and kind of keep us going the way we've been so successful.
The men's cross country team has 5 national titles. Of those 5, you have been coach for 4. What does that mean to you?
I'm just excited to be a part of the 53, and I think I want to keep growing that number. I love to brag to my coaching colleagues at other schools that think they have a big name or a big brand, and I'll say, really, how many titles do you have? And they might have 7 or 8 or 9. I said, well, we have 53. And the 4 in cross country, we're climbing the ladder. I've been a part of 4, but we've got 5 total. We are climbing the ladder there. 11 is the most for any school. Arkansas has 11 titles, so we're chasing after them, and they're constantly threatening to add one. So we got to get busy if we're going to catch them. Everything's a competition. I love competition, and being able to kind of help Oklahoma State stay in the fight for the most titles, NCAA titles, is fun.
53 meaning Oklahoma State's titles for all sports.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How are you going to feel seeing one more banner being added to the rafters in Gallagher-Iba?
Just really excited for the program, really excited for the athletes that were a part of it. And also, we had a great little run from 2009 to 2012 where we won 3 titles. And then we had a period where we didn't win for, it's been 11 years. And I'm gonna be excited for the guys that came in that era where we didn't win, because they kept the program going. We didn't win titles, and they worked just as hard as the teams that are winning. We had some things happen, and there's some disappointments, but really happy for them that they kept the tradition going, kept our legacy going, and now we're back to winning. We can kind of keep adding to those totals.